Hey all, welcome to the Suffolk Legal Innovation and Technology Lab's first Wednesday workshops for the document assembly line community. These workshops are a chance to dive deeper into topics related to building guided interviews with Docassemble using the document assembly line. Today's topic is demystifying I and X in Docassemble code. And our expert guest is Michelle, a developer, a volunteer with the assembly line, the developer of the ALKiln package. I'll ask her to introduce herself in a minute. First, this workshop is being recorded and we will share it on our YouTube channel. To find it, just check our blog at suffolklitlab.org or search for Suffolk Lit Lab on YouTube. It strikes me now that it's weird to say that in the video since they will have already found it, but it's on my script. If you're participating live on Zoom, please use the chat to ask questions. I will call attention to them as we go. Your video is disabled, but since it often helps to share your screen to demonstrate a problem, go ahead and do that. Just please wait until Michelle or I invite you to. Before we dive in, if you're hearing about the Lit Lab or the document assembly line for the first time, head over to suffolklitlab.org to learn more. Everyone who uses Docassemble and the document assembly line tools is welcome to attend our weekly community meetings, join our community forum on Microsoft Teams, and attend these workshops. If you'd like to join us, just email us at litlab@suffolk.edu. Okay, let's get started. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Michelle, and you can take it from there. I'm going to launch a poll that Michelle asked to just learn a little bit about your familiarity with I and X. Please take a moment and click that. Go, take it away, Michelle.
All right. So hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein. I've been volunteering with the Suffolk LIT Lab for a number of years now. And I am primarily working on developing a testing framework for Docassemble interviews. I am, like Sam said, I'm going to be talking about I and X, and the poll just asks, how about your familiarity with I and X, so that I know when to talk more slowly? I don't know. I'll still be covering the same stuff, but oh, cool. Very good, very good. A lot of people are a little familiar, and some people are less familiar. Awesome, amazing. Okay, so I'll get started and keep an eye on those in case anything pops up, but I think I have what I need. And of course, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Sam will try to let me know when something pops up. And also, always feel free to ask on Slack or in Teams if you're there. Okay, so this is about I, index variables, and X, generic objects. There's going to be other code as well, so that it will glue the questions together and we will see the questions flowing. Try to ignore those as much as you can. We can cover them. If you're curious, post in chat and we can cover them a little bit more, but they're just so we can, get through the interviews that I'm going to demo. I'm going to include the assembly line package as well because it has some useful visual clues for us, but I'm not using it for anything other than the visual clues. So I will share my screen now. And we can get started. Okay. So I have seen folks using I more than X. So I'm going to start with that, and we'll move on from there. And we will see how clear I can make it yet. This is several iterations in, and it's still a complex topic. So the letter I here has primordial roots from ancient times, which is math times. But in Docassemble, I stands for index variable. So usually I stands for index in other contexts of coding. And it's how we use to define, and it's what we use to either define or use an item that is in a list. So for example, we'll see, I have a list here of, bears on this screen, sorry. Brown bear, mama bear, Pooh bear, all the best bears. And I have a screen that will show us that list of bears. Sorry, there's going to be some copy pasting to save some time. And I'm going to run it and just think about what you expect to see. So in lists, 0, this is the index right here, this is 0, is the first item, 1 is the second item, and 2 is the third item. So that can be unintuitive, and yet in most languages, that is the way. Oh, mandatory true. Oh, right. I will not use the assembly line package in that case. This is my own local server, so we will find the information in other ways. So we've got the first type of bear, which is bear types of bears 0, brown bear, and 1, which is mama bear, and 2, which is the third bear, Pooh bear. Okay. So, sorry, having some personal challenges. So in Docassemble, we can actually use a DA list to collect the list of objects, which I think some of you may be familiar with. So we're going to go from types of bears to our favorite bears. Oh, that we don't need to change. And we have a favorite bear that is a DA list. A DA list is a type of object, and it lets us do special things, like with I, that I will show you in a minute. We're also going to use still a mandatory true block. I'm just going to call this interview order, because that is the nomenclature that our team uses to talk about this kind of thing cohesively. Okay. Next, I am going to lose my window. So I'm going to put that over here. And I'm going to use the DA list, if I can press the darn button, to get my favorite bears. I'm going to use favorite bears 0. And we'll start with the regular index here. In order to ask that question, I will need a question that asks about bear 0. And I will need to show the results of that question with our again using favorite bears 0. So what is a bear you like? And I like Paddington bear. And I'm going to hit continue. It lists the bear I like, and shows us the final screen. That's what I'm expecting to see. So that's good. So here we use the index 0, which triggered the question, favorite bears with the index 0, and showed us the screen with favorite bears index 0. My goodness. Okay. So, so how shall we walk through this? Now we're going to learn a little bit about the interview order and the way Docassemble goes through interview order, because that's really going to help us when we talk about I and so on and so forth. So what happens is Docassemble gets here in the code. It runs the mandatory block, which is always required. Then it gets to favorite bear 0, and it says, that's not defined. I'm going to go look for a definition for favorite bear 0. So it goes to the bottom of the page, goes to the first block, and it searches all through the first block, and it says, favorite bear 0 is not defined in there. So it goes to the next block, up, and it climbs up this way, and it finds, here's a definition for favorite bear 0. I will trigger that question. So here, this code right here, favorite bear 0 matches the code, the variable that we're asking for in our code. And that's how Docassemble decides what to do there. In Docassemble, you can use I in place of 0. It's not in a lot of languages, but you can use I right here. So we're still going to keep it simple. We're going to ask for favorite bear 0. And we're going to see that when Docassemble travels up through the blocks, it's going to find favorite bears I, and it will consider that to be a match, a correct match for favorite bears 0. And that's what we can see here. We can see in our sources, by pressing our sources button up here, that the interview is looking for, it says needed definition of favorite bears 0. So we know that's what it was looking for. I'm going to go back to Pooh Bear for this. And there we go. So again, if you run into any questions, have any thoughts, post them
I have a
in the
question.
chat. Yes.
It sounds like I has a little bit more significance in Python code or maybe Docassemble than it does in some other languages I'm more familiar with, where you have to name your iterator or your index every time. Like in JavaScript, you would have to say, I'm using I for my iterator. I don't think it has any default meaning. It sounds like in Docassemble, it automatically, if you put it in there, it automatically becomes the iterator and starts at 0.
So for those who are more familiar with coding nomenclature, I can show a regular in a language what you might do as an iterator. Let's say we have a dictionary. And we iterate through that dictionary. I have to, and I can do log in Docassemble. I will have to name key in order to use key later. In Docassemble, you are correct, Sam. Not in Python. In Docassemble
Oh,
only.
okay.
And I'll go over that in a second. That's part of why our team sometimes calls it a magical variable, because Docassemble gives I its value. We don't give I its value.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So what happens in this case is Docassemble comes here. It looks for it sees favorite bear 0 is undefined. It goes right to the bottom of the page, and it gets to the start of the first block, goes down, finds that favorite bear 0 is not defined here. It looks in this block, favorite bear 0 is not defined here. It continues all the way up through the whole script, and then it starts again at the bottom, and it looks for favorite bears I, and it looks for favorite bears I here, and it finds it here. And what I forgot to say is that when it starts again, it sets I to 0 at this time. And we'll see how that changes over time. But we can see when we ran it that even though we used I, and it shows us using I right here, it asks for favorite bear 0. So it has turned I into 0. So, because deep in its heart, Docassemble knows what you mean, or at least what it wants you to mean when you use I. So now that gets us 1 bear, but we're not going to ask for first favorite bears 0, and then favorite bears 1, and favorite bears, and my keyboard, good place. Favorite bears 1, favorite bears 2, and so on and so forth, because sometimes we don't know how many favorite bears we're going to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our usual list collection, which won't load. And we're going to look for, we're going to ask for our list of items dynamically. And that means that it's going to change over time. We don't know what it's going to do, so we need to remain flexible. So I'm going to add a little glue now. In here.
We've got a question based on your last answer, and so maybe now is the best time to ask
Great.
it. Alice Johnson says, if Docassemble does all of that work, checking for favorite bears 0 or favorite bears I, looking for a favorite bears I before it sets it to 0, is it better to use 0 if you only have one input to shortcut that whole thing?
It really isn't much of a performance hit. Docassemble
Okay.
does it pretty efficiently. I think you have to get, I don't know how deep you have to get into, how much data you'd have to have in order for that to be a problem. I have not run into that problem. It does set, just to be clear, it does go up searching for favorite bears 0 and then sets I to 0 and then goes up looking for I.
Gotcha.
So it's looking
Okay.
for anything that matches favorite bears 0. The question was about performance, I assume. Correct me if
It sounds
I'm
like it.
wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
That was
I
what I
mean,
was thinking of too.
I think maybe Dallas can let us know.
He did.
Okay, great. So now we're going to use a little bit more glue. And instead of 0, we're going to say dot gather. And this is it ties in with magical I. And when Docassemble sees dot gather parentheses, it is calling a method. It is setting off behavior that will search for I. It will also search for 0. It'll be happy with 0, 1, or 2 as well. And it will be happy with I, but it's going to keep going until it feels your criteria for gathering the list is satisfied. So now we are going to change our question here. It's not just a bear. It's going to be one of any number of bears. And we're going to use I right here so that we can see when it's changing and what the value is. We're going to continue using I here and a little bit more glue code in order to check if there is another bear, so we can keep asking the questions without another screen. And our final page is going to look a little different. We're going to use comma and list, a little bit more glue code, to get a nice printed list of our favorite bears. Okay. So first we start at index 0, right? The code has, the Docassemble has gone to the bottom of the page, didn't find it here, but it did find it here, because that's a match for what gather is looking for. I'm gonna say baby bear. Do you have like any other bears? Yeah, I sure do. I like blue. And any other ones? Continue. I like Paddington. No more. All right, let's go. And the bears I like show up here. So that's our next stage of using I. That's how we can dynamically collect a list. Okay, so what is happening here is that for the first iteration, like I said, it goes up looking for favorite bears 0, doesn't find it. It sets I to 1. And this might not be exactly the execution order that happens in Docassemble, but it is the practical outcome. It sets I to 0, I to 0. goes up looking for I and replaces I with 0. Then it goes, then you finish with that question. You say, yes, there is another bear. So it goes looking again, and it goes looking for favorite bears 1. And when it doesn't find favorite bears 1, it goes, it sets I to 1, and then it goes up looking for I, and then sets I to 1 here. And all of that is automatic. And just to confirm, we got index 2. Well, I mean, I was referring to index 1. We got index 1, and then we got index 2. Okay. What folks do questions have at this point?
Not seeing any, but if the folks have them, drop them in there. Oh, there we go. Emily has one. Says your favorite bears 1 question, if you have a specific one, could be anywhere in the code, even above favorite bears I, and it would be called rather than the I version.
Yeah, we're going to go over the order of precedence. Yes. Let's
Okay, cool.
hold off on that until we get there. But if I'm missing it, definitely call me back onto it.
Will
So
do.
you can use I with DA lists. You can use it with DA dict, and you can use it with DA ordered dict. Though it looks a little bit different. And if folks want, we can go into those specifics, but there is a lot to cover. There's another comment or question?
Dallas Johnson says Docassemble documentation seems to always start these with a ready to enter bears information screen. It seems like you've cut out that extra screen. Is that right? And maybe,
Yes.
I guess, implied is why. Would you do it one way or the other?
So I'm doing it this way because I am skipping the sugar for the demo. But usually I would ask, do you like any bears? And then I would ask, which is there are any. And if we want, we can go through that whole cycle. It just depends what we can get to. So it's just, and it depends on your audience. If you know your audience already likes bears, if this is a bear forum, and so the people who are here are gonna like bears, you can go right into the, right into listing the names.
I suppose, like in the court form context, if your interview is related to an answer to a complaint, there has to be at least one plaintiff. So you wouldn't need to ask if there are any plaintiffs. But if it were something else, you might need to ask, are there any other defendants, or are there something like that? So
I'm going to trust you on that, Sam. I didn't say it in the introduction, but I am in no way a lawyer. I am only a
fair enough.
coder, a humble coder. And that is part of why this is about bears and not about plaintiffs.
Well,
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to get into any legal trouble here. Okay, so you should not insert I just anywhere. You should, I like to think of these blocks that use I as magical themselves. Magical I goes in magical blocks. I does not go in mundane blocks. For example, a mandatory true block. Can folks, well, guess in your minds what will happen if I put I in this mandatory block? I'm gonna save and run, and we'll see what happens. A block must be in the form. That is not what I expected. So that's interesting. I think that might have been this. That's a new error to me, and I will look that one up. I'm going to comment out. Oh, there we go. All right. There was a reference to a variable I that could not be looked up in the question file. So here, Docassemble is treating I as a regular variable. And you can use I as a regular variable. You can set I to something. You can say I equals 3 if you want. I do not. Personally, I make the choice to never use I myself. I don't need that complexity in my life. So I keep I out of mundane blocks. And that also goes for initial blocks as well. And blocks that are triggered from the initial block without without dot gather or without a loop. So if I just went favorite apples, favorite apple, get favorite root, and I added a block here that had code, and I said get favorite fruit equals true, and I had favorite root I here. It is not a problem that I'm asking for favorite fruit I in general, but I am asking for it in a way that wasn't, I didn't use gather, and I didn't have a loop, and it didn't in any way trigger I. Docassemble, you have to make Docassemble really want I before it goes looking for it. And if you want to use I, you got to get Docassemble to want I. And that's going to be with .gather or with a loop, which I can go over a little bit later. All right, let's clean up a bit. Okay, so before I go into, I think the precedence is at the end, so we'll get to that, I hope. What time is it now? I think we're doing all right. I wanted to say, to just let you know, it is possible to use I and J and K, etc. You have so many letters. You're never going to need to use all of them. And why do you have these specific letters? Also because of math. Don't ask questions that you don't want answers to. So, and what these mean, this is for a situation where you have nested lists. And I'm going to avert your eyes if you do not want to see complex code, because the code gets complex here. We need to have some objects. We need to have some, where is my supplementary material? We need to have some, there we go. Nested lists, but this is for nested lists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some more complex objects, a list of favorite bears where every bear is an individual. And there definitely are some bears, and we will make a special attribute that gives Docassemble, tells Docassemble to look deeper, just dig deeper than that. And we're going to use I in our objects block to say that every I has an attribute called reasons. So that is every individual in the list of favorite bears has an attribute reasons that is itself a DA list. And we're still just going to call favorite bears.gather. That's going to stay the same. But I am going to change the question to remove the there is another till later. I'm going to add our done attribute in here, which is again glue code. But I don't know, I guess it's all glue code at this point. And it's going to ask for the bear's first name and for the bear's reasons, which is another list. Remember that reasons is a nested list. It is a list that is inside the individual, that is inside a list of individuals. So just please shut your ears if this is too much. You can always go over the video later on. It is just a lot of new information. There is another question about the favorite bear, to make sure we ask whether there's another bear. And I'm actually going to put this here. The reason why you like the favorite bear. Are there any other reasons? Reasons, there's another. And here we have favorite bears I, reasons J, because we've got our individual, and then we've got at least one reason for that individual bear. And then at the end, I'm going to make a super fancy screen, which is going to show us the bears and the reasons. And pray for me that this works. No. Okay, so I'm going to copy the code wholesale. We'll lose some of our notes, but and take away assembly line. I must have missed something in there, so I apologize for that. I will say curiosity. He has curiosity. I also like Pooh because it's got friends. Got no other reasons, and we're just going to skip any other bears just to get through this more quickly. So we like Pooh because Pooh has curiosity and Pooh has friends. So we can go over that in more detail if folks want, but I think there's just a lot to cover right now. So I'm going to go back to where we were. So we are going to move on to a different part of this, so maybe that doesn't matter so much. Okay. Folks, if what questions are folks left with? Now would be a decent time for that. All right. So I'm going to go on, but again, always feel free to hop in with a question. So now we're going to go on to X. Actually, let's clear our palette. We are going to deal with objects. So X is also a magic variable. And like we noticed that I let us write one code block to ask many questions about many bears. So X also lets us make one code block to ask questions about multiple, here, individuals. So sticking with the bear theme, we're going to write, first of all, a simplified version of this that does not use X. So we have a bear and we have a bear's companion. We are going to add the interview order, which is just going to ask for the bear's first name and the companion's first name. And we'll write a question for each of those for now. So first it asks for the name of the bear, and then it asks for the name of the companion. And we will show at the end our bears and companions. So if we think about this, Docassemble is going to see that this variable is undefined. It actually first looks at bear and it sees that bear is defined. Bear is defined right here. It's happy about bear. It doesn't go looking for bear. And name, strangely enough, is automatically defined by Docassemble because bear is an individual. But the first name, there's no value for that. A name is defined as something that has a first attribute and a last attribute, a middle attribute, and all that kind of nonsense. So first, when it gets to first, it says, I have to go looking for that. So it goes to, again, the bottom of the screen, finds the first block, looks through the first block. It sees that bear.name.first, there's no match for it there. It goes to the second block, it looks through there and it says there's no match for bear.name.first. And then it goes to the third block and it says, all right, got it, here it is. Let's run that and make sure that works. Always like proof. Pooh is a bear I like, and Piglet is his companion. And we got the pair of them together again. Always good. All right. Questions. What questions do folks have so far? Okay. I will actually keep going and you'll tell me if there are questions. All right. So I can actually use X to write one question block. X is a generic object. X always comes with the generic object key here, or modifier, depending on what vocabulary you want to use. And here I'm going to make the generic object match the generic object of both my variables. My bear and my companion are both individuals. So I'm going to ask for the name. Actually, let's make that idea a bit more clear. Names matter. We can talk about that sometime. And I'm going to change the question to show. We'll see what this shows us. This is fun. That's a fun thing Docassemble does for us, though not as good for translation as we'd like. But that is a different. I think there's a video on that. So, and instead of, let's just comment this out. Instead of bear.name.first, we're going to use x.name.first. Again, x can only appear when there is a generic object, modifier, or key in the block. Okay. So let's see if this runs. I hope so. Really nice. Okay. So here it says a bear you like, and what is the name of the bear? You'll notice, ooh, this is great. If we press the sources button, you'll notice that it says in here x.object name object underscore name parentheses. So that is actually because here it's taking the name from here. So sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't, depending on what your variable name is. And it's certainly not very translatable depending on what you're doing. But let's see. Oh, and one thing to note is that here it is asking for bear.name.first. And we notice that here we're asking for x.name.first. So we can see that it's replaced x with bear right here. That was in the wrong order, but we'll just use our favorites, Pooh and Piglet. And we get to the end. So again, what Docassemble does is it goes to the bottom of the block of the script. It searches for bear.name.first. It doesn't find it, doesn't find it, doesn't find it, doesn't find it anywhere in here. Goes back to the bottom, sets x to bear, and then it looks for x in here, and it doesn't find it, it doesn't find it, it finds it. Actually, it doesn't look in here at all. I shouldn't even be going through this one. It doesn't look through the comment at all. Sorry, folks, I misled you there. Then when it's done with that, it does the same for companion. First, it looks for companion name first. I'm just going to delete this because it's messing me up, let alone anybody else. It doesn't see companion.name.first, goes throughout, doesn't find it, sets x to equal companion, and looks for x, it found x, it replaces x with companion, and that's where we get our second question. So all kinds of magics. So X should work for any object, any Docassemble object, rather. It will work for individual, it will work for DA dict, DA object, person, business, and even for a DA list. And we can go over what it looks like when you mix those two together a little bit later. But first, we're going to definitely ask a question if there's a question in your heart. But we're going to talk a little about order of precedence. So what happens when there are multiple blocks that set the same variable? Let's go back to our I, because I think that's easier to see there. Where we find our I code so that we don't have to go through it all over again. Here we go. So this is just the same code we had before. We have, except for, I don't want to use our, and I don't want to use assembly line. Okay. So we have our favorite bears gather. We have our bear question about our favorite bears. Supposing we, oh, and this is a sneak peek into X. Are we in X right now? That's very interesting. This must have been a draft where I started doing this experiment. So if we use favorite bears 0, when Docassemble sees two values that conflict, remember that it's first looking for favorite bears 0 when it comes up through here. So it's not going to care about favorite bears I, even if favorite bears I comes before favorite bears 0, it's not looking for favorite bears I. It's looking for favorite bears 0. So when I hit save and run, I'm going to get what is the first bear you like, as opposed to bear at index whatever, what is a bear you like. We can tell by the ID of the question. If we look at the ID, we've got the first bear, and here we've got one of many bears. We can open up our debugging tools again, and we can see that it says the first bear, and it's got the 0 here. So this is because Docassemble searches by order of specificity. The more specific your variable is, the more precedent it has for being asked. It will be asked first. The most specific one will be asked first. So you can have a different question for your first bear as opposed to all the rest of the bears. They can have, you know, their own dumb old question, because who cares about anyone except the first bear, really. And this is the same for X. If we have where's my X's? My X code. If we have the X here, I will comment this out. If we have bear.name.first, if we have x.name.first, and we'll put, what was it? I'm just going to make this a little bit more quick, a little bit quicker. Save and run. I hope that works. What is the name of the bear? Name of the someone is Piglet. So we can see here, you've got the X here. And we can see in the previous screen, sorry I didn't show that, we have the bear. So that is order of precedence. And supposing you have two that are exactly the same, say you have two blocks that both set bear.name.first. True name of the bear. Docassemble, since it's going up from the bottom, it's scanning up from the bottom, it's climbing the script, it's going to take the first one it comes across. So we're looking for this true here. Make it bold. Save and run. And what is the true name of the bear? And that goes the same if you have I have to copy that block first. X as well, and it works for I as well. And we've got true name right here. All right. So that is order of precedence. Now, which
I feel like
one?
so many of the things I've been seeing while working on interviews make so much more sense now.
I'm glad to hear
I'm
it.
not kidding. This is really helpful.
I'm glad to hear it. I know it's all a little dry. It's all a little dense.
This is the
And
first
I have
workshop we've done though, where we get to the end of it though, and I'm gonna go rewatch it like tomorrow.
fantastic. I win. Does that mean I win?
Sure.
When we give out the awards.
Yep.
All right, so there's only 10 minutes left, and that's about time. So there's always more to talk about here. Do folks have questions that I can? Well, I mean, whoever wants to stick around, I suppose I can answer whatever questions folks have. And, you know, we can go into various nuances. I've just explained everything so well that no one is left with any questions. That's wonderful.
You actually answered all the questions that were popping up for me as we got through it. So
Fantastic. And Emily, did that order of precedence cover what you were hoping to express?
said yes.
All right. Fantastic. Fantastic. Good. Okay, so the documentation for these are here and here. Though there's one thing I wanted to cover, which is that order of precedence for objects is a little bit more complicated. We can cover that another time. It will work in the way I showed. There's just a way that you can, if we put person here, just real quick, preview for some future us. Person gets low, does trigger this question. I will show you. It does stand in for this question. So person does work, but it actually gets lower precedence than an individual.
Like we need to do an order of precedence workshop at some point.
Yeah. I think it's just 5 more minutes, but it's 5 more minutes that might bear some
It's
discussion.
useful.
Sure. Okay.
We asked, is individual a more specific kind of person? Or I guess vice
Yes,
versa.
exactly. So an individual is actually a class. So an individual is a class, but it is a subclass of person, which itself is a subclass of DA object. I don't know why I'm doing parentheses. It's fancy. So, so you can use both person and DA object. And supposing you have a question for a bunch of people and individuals, you can use use person, and it will catch all of those. And then for some individuals, ones that have a hair color, for example, you can use a generic object and it will only ask those questions about individuals. That is a very unclear explanation because I spent no time putting it together.
So, sounds like the gist of it is that DA object is more generic than person, which is more generic than individual. And so because
Exactly.
individual is the most specific one, that takes priority over the other ones.
Exactly. And Docassemble's documentation doesn't really cover very well the inheritance between these different objects, and these different classes. But with some experimentation, you can discover. Okay. All right.
Oh, thanks so much, Michelle. And obviously, if
Yeah.
people have more follow-up questions, Michelle does office hours twice a week, and you can always find her and me and Bryce and Quentin and others, everyone in the community in the Microsoft Teams discussion forum and ask questions there. Thanks so
Thanks for
much.
coming, everyone. Sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
I was just trying to find my stop